Well, for a little bit more on this, we're now joined in studio by SABC reporter Khayalihle Khumalo, who's been following that story for us. Kaya, always good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. This is a big story. We heard the minister relay her thoughts and her message. Overall, what was she trying to communicate?
I think a very key message from the minister's address today, Peter, was around the issue of reassuring the tourists, those who have made bookings to South Africa, that it remains a very safe place to be. In fact, she kept on bending about these numbers, saying that since the dawn of democracy, only 3 tourists have been killed in South Africa. So this is a very third incident. But also apart from that, Peter, I think it's a bit of an indictment from the side of the law enforcement agencies, because that area around the Numbi Gate by Kruger National Park has always been identified as a hotspot. In fact, the Deputy Minister of Police, Castle Matale, had gone to that particular area. The community also raised concerns. In fact, even Police Minister speaking about the 11 incidents, how some tourists were robbed, and many other members of the community. So the challenge now facing the department, the minister says they'll relook in terms of the security features. How can they go back to the drawing board and make sure that they try and improve security around the Kruger National Park? We know that the sector's been through a lot. It's been decimated by COVID-19, and we do know that the Germans, you look at the UK, Americans, and then the Germans, they're the third largest contributors internationally in terms of the tourism sector.
3 people only since 1994. That sounds...
Yeah, well, we have to try and verify those figures. Wow. But Peter, the minister was very convinced. But also something that really came quite strongly was the very efficiency that how, the different entities from the health department to the police to tourism, how they responded to this particular incident. Already the family flew today to Germany. Obviously, they're still traumatized by what they experienced. But the minister also spoke about the fortitude of the wife of the deceased. But something of very concern from the point of view of the family was how the name was revealed, how this particular story has really just been making headlines in Germany, and some children really got to know that their father died in South Africa when the media reported.
The minister managed to spend some time with the family as well. Some might say unprecedented as well. So she really has gone out of her way to perhaps show her face, paint a picture.
Well, absolutely, Peter. And in fact, one of the questions I asked the minister as she was walking out, I said, are you concerned as a sector how this incident will tarnish tourism in South Africa? And the minister said, well, if I was not concerned, I would have not gone out to this family. I would have not spent the entire day. The staff from the Ministry of Tourism, all of them were right around OR Tambo. So you could really see that there were very concerted efforts to make sure that they try and put the family at ease in light of this tragedy. But also, apart from that, we do know at this particular point in time, also there's that 50,000 Rand reward that had been issued out by the Chamber of Commerce from Mpumalanga to make sure that they get to the bottom of this case. So far, only 3 people of interest have been identified, but we'll just wait and see how it goes.
All right. So when she was talking, she suggested that these were the people that were responsible. So she spoke ahead of time then. So these are just people of interest, haven't been charged as yet.
Haven't been charged as yet, and that has been a strong point that has been tried to be conveyed by the police department. I tried to verify the information. There was a very clear point that so far these are people of interest. Police will continue to investigate, but also just apart from that, it's been interesting gauging also a reaction from the international community, from the tourism sector itself, with a clear suggestion that if anyone kills a tourist, that should really amount to, an economic crime, because that's as good as a cable theft, because we know that tourism is a very central sector in South Africa, contributing about 3.75 to the GDP. And it really has a potential to really just change the lives of South Africans who are facing quite a number of challenges.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's going to be quite a debate, because the value of life can't be based on whether you're a tourist or not. The other 11 incidents, was anything ever resolved, or we just move on?
I believe we kind of moved on because, I mean, from what they were saying, that these incidents happened, and obviously there was an integrated approach with so many sectors who came together to try and address this issue. I mean, others do go as far as calling for the closure of the Nimba Gates by the Kruger National Park, but obviously now there's this now renewed efforts to try and address this issue. But most importantly, we do know that, I mean, for example, you know, the German ambassador as well was part of the press briefing, also appreciating the efforts in terms of how South Africa has responded to this incident. But you could really see that he was really saying, you know, when you read between the lines, that the issue of crime should really be addressed. And we know that it's a very important time in South Africa. You know, the weather is quite appealing. It's hot, and quite a number of tourists tend to come to our shores. So there must be a very clear way of making sure that the crime issue is being directed. So it was quite interesting as well, because the minister was at pains to say, look, the crime is a big issue in South Africa, but her department is purely safeguarding the interest of the tourist. And the police minister, Begitele, then will have to work hard in making sure that the South Africans are well protected as well.
It must be the most difficult time for a family. They come here on holiday, spend time in Cape Town, in Durban, and then to end in such a way. I believe that the remains have been flown to Germany already.
So far, Peter, what we do know is that the wife of the deceased left around 5 p.m. South African time. And due to the immigration laws, the German laws, so the family wanted to fly along with the remains, but that was not the case. So they had to comply with these immigration laws. So far, the information that we have in our disposal is that now the remains will be flown tomorrow to Germany. All
right, and I suppose the hard work of trying to convince the international community it's still safe to come to South Africa.
Well, very much so, Peter, because, you know, just once again, going back to Minister Sisulu, she kept on saying it's quite impossible to go around saying, come to South Africa, and then you have such incidents, really calling for the issue of crime to be addressed in South Africa. We know it is a very big concern, but also there was also another concern whether are tourists pulling out in light of this incident, because it has gone viral. You know, it's making headlines in some of the major international media houses, but the minister is quite convinced that people are still going to come to South Africa. This is one of the sectors that is still recovering. It's been decimated by the pandemic. We also had the restrictions. So now this is a time to really make sure that we put it back on track in terms of the job creation. I mean, you look at the lodge where the tourists were based, we do understand that about 200 members who are working around there are mainly from that community. So if that lodge are to be shut down, so one can really just see the very severe consequences, as much as the family is going through a very tough time. But the minister said really they showed a bit of resilience, because they were able to relay the accounts of what really transpired, Peter. And there was a point where they were really saying that, you know, as the deceased had his foot by the accelerator, he was still able, before he passed away, he was still able to make sure that he's still having his foot there, and had not been in a position to accelerate, a lot could have happened. A lot of possessions could have been stolen. So the community was able to respond because they had the sound of this vehicle that had really just rammed across the tanker.
Khayalihle, always good talking to you. Thanks so much.